Standing in my empty living room, I watched my son Bradley load the last box into his BMW. 3 days after burying Margaret, my wife of 42 years, he'd already sold our family home without asking me. "The assisted living facility has excellent reviews, Dad," he said, checking his phone. I nodded quietly, gripping the envelope hidden in my jacket pocket. Inside were the keys to a house he didn't know existed, along with bank statements showing $540,000 he'd never find. Sometimes silence is the sharpest weapon. The morning of Margaret's funeral arrived with an unseasonable chill that seemed to pierce through my black suit. October in Indianapolis rarely felt this cold, but perhaps grief has a way of making everything feel sharper, more raw. I sat in my car outside Riverside Memorial Chapel, arriving an hour early just to gather my thoughts. Margaret would have laughed at my punctuality. "Carson," she'd say, "you'd show up early to your own funeral if you could manage it." Through my windshield, I watched the funeral director's staff preparing for the service. White flowers arranged just as Margaret had specified in her final wishes. She'd planned everything down to the last detail, though. I wouldn't understand the full extent of her preparations until later. A familiar BMW pulled into the parking lot, and my stomach tightened. Bradley and his wife Jennifer emerged both dressed impeccably in designer black clothing that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. Even from 50 feet away, I could see them engaged in animated conversation. Curiosity got the better of me. I cracked my window just enough to let their voices drift across the morning air. "We need to move fast," Bradley was saying, his voice carrying that sharp edge I'd been hearing more often lately. "The old man won't fight it. He's too grief-stricken to think straight." Jennifer's reply made my blood run cold. "The realtor said we could have the house on the market by Monday. With the neighborhood values, we're looking at least $800,000. More than enough to cover the restaurant losses," Bradley replied. "Plus, once we get him into Sunshine Acres, we can liquidate his other assets. Power of attorney should go through within the week." I gripped my steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. They were discussing my life, my home, my future, as if I were already gone. As if Margaret's body wasn't even cold yet. "Just remember to act supportive during the service," Jennifer added. "Your father's brother will be watching. We need everyone to think this is about his well-being." They moved toward the chapel entrance, and I forced myself to take deep breaths. 42 years of marriage, 38 years of being a father, and this is what it came to. My own son plotting to strip me of everything while I grieved. I waited another 10 minutes before entering the chapel. The space was already filling with friends and family. Margaret had touched so many lives as a school principal for 30 years. Her former students, now adults with children of their own, filled the pews alongside neighbors and relatives. Bradley approached me with open arms, his face a mask of concern. "Dad, how are you holding up, Jennifer? And I were so worried when you didn't answer your phone this morning." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't heard him in the parking lot, I might have believed the tremor in his voice, the gentle way he guided me to the front pew. Jennifer dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though I noticed they remained remarkably dry. My brother Frank settled beside me, his presence a comfort. At 71, Frank was 3 years older than me, but sharp as a tack. He'd driven down from Chicago despite his bad hip. "How you doing, Carson?" he whispered. "Managing," I replied, though the word felt hollow. Frank studied Bradley, who was now greeting other mourners with practiced sympathy. "That boy of yours is putting on quite a show." I said nothing, but Frank had always been perceptive. He'd spent 40 years as a detective before retiring. Not much got past him. The service began, and I tried to focus on the pastor's words about Margaret's dedication to education, her compassion, her strength. But my attention kept drifting to Bradley, who sat one row behind me. Every few minutes, I caught the subtle glow of his phone screen. He was texting during his mother's funeral. When it came time for family remembrances, Bradley took the podium. His eulogy was eloquent, touching on all the right notes. He spoke of Margaret's guidance, her wisdom, her unconditional love. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he recalled childhood memories. Yet even as he spoke, I saw his eyes flick to his phone on the podium. A notification had appeared. The tears didn't stop him from glancing at it. After the service, as mourners filed past to offer condolences, Frank pulled me aside near a quiet corner of the chapel. "Something's not right with that boy," he said bluntly. "I've been watching him all morning. Those aren't tears of grief." "Frank, please, not today." He gripped my shoulder. "I'm just saying, be careful. Grief makes people vulnerable, and vultures know when to circle." If only he knew how right he was. The reception was held in the chapel's adjoining hall. I moved through it in a daze, accepting condolences, sharing memories of Margaret. All the while, I tracked Bradley's movements. He spent most of the time in the corner on his phone, occasionally putting on a show of grief when someone important approached. It was during a quiet moment when I stepped outside for air that everything became crystal clear. Bradley's car was parked near the side entrance, windows down. His briefcase lay open on the passenger seat, papers visible within. I glanced around. Everyone was inside. Moving quickly, I approached the vehicle and peered at the documents. My heart nearly stopped. Legal papers, incompetency evaluation forms, power of attorney documents, all partially filled out, all with my name. The letterhead showed a law firm's name, Paulson Garrett and Associates, the same firm that handled real estate transactions. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and photographed each visible page. The forms claimed I was showing signs of dementia, that I was unable to manage my affairs, that my son Bradley was petitioning for full control of my assets for my own protection. The date on the forms made me stagger. They'd been prepared 2 weeks ago. While Margaret was dying, while I was spending every moment by her bedside, my son was preparing to declare me incompetent. I heard voices approaching and quickly moved away from the car. My phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my pocket, loaded with evidence of my son's betrayal. Back inside, I found Bradley chatting with Margaret's lawyer, William Hartley. Both men stopped talking as I approached. "Dad," Bradley said smoothly. "Mr. Hartley was just expressing his condolences. He mentioned he'll be in touch about Mom's estate matters." Hartley, a distinguished man in his 60s, nodded politely. "No rush, Carson. When you're ready." Margaret was a wonderful woman. Something in Hartley's eyes suggested he wanted to say more, but Bradley's presence seemed to prevent it. I filed that away for later consideration. The reception continued for another hour. I played my part, the grieving widower, barely holding it together. It wasn't entirely an act. Despite everything, the loss of Margaret was a crushing weight. But now, it was mixed with something else: anger, determination, and a growing understanding that my beloved wife might have known more than she ever let on. As the crowd thinned, Bradley approached with Jennifer. "Dad, we need to talk about arrangements. The house, your future care. I know it's soon, but these things need to be addressed." I looked at him, this stranger, wearing my son's face. When had he become this? Where was the boy who used to build model airplanes with me in the garage, who cried when he struck out in Little League, who promised to take care of his mother and me when we grew old? "Tomorrow," I said quietly. "We can talk tomorrow." Bradley seemed frustrated, but nodded. "Of course. Get some rest. Jennifer and I will stop by in the morning to help you start sorting through things." They left, and I stood in the emptying reception hall surrounded by the remnants of my wife's memorial. Frank approached one last time. "You need anything, you call me," he said firmly. "Day or night. Something's going on, and you don't have to face it alone." I hugged my brother, drawing strength from his solid presence. "Thank you, Frank. I might take you up on that." As I drove home to the house, Bradley was already planning to sell. I thought about Margaret's final days. How she'd insisted on speaking to Hartley privately. How she'd asked me to trust her, to be patient, to remember that things aren't always what they seem. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Carson, this is William Hartley. We need to meet privately. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. Come alone. There are things about Margaret's estate you need to know. things she insisted remain confidential until after the funeral. I stared at the message, then at my empty house, then at the photos on my phone of Bradley's betrayal. Margaret, even in death, was still protecting me. The question was, from what else? That night, I lay in our bed now, too large and too cold without her. I spoke to her picture on the nightstand, a habit I'd probably never break. What did you know, my love? What did you see that I missed? The silence that answered was deafening, but somehow I felt her presence. Tomorrow would bring revelations. Tonight I would grieve. But I would also prepare. My son thought he was dealing with a broken old man. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The law offices of Hartley and Associates occupied the top floor of a restored Victorian building in downtown Indianapolis. I arrived at 9:45, my mind still replaying yesterday's discoveries. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, offered coffee and guided me to a private conference room. "Mr. Hartley will be right with you," she said softly. "He cleared his entire morning for this meeting." That should have been my first clue that something significant was coming. William Hartley entered precisely at 10, carrying a leather portfolio and a sealed box. His expression was somber, but determined, like a man about to deliver news that would change everything. "Carson, thank you for coming. Before we begin, I need to ask, did anyone follow you here? Did you tell anyone about this meeting?" The question caught me off guard. "No, I came alone. Bradley thinks I'm at home sorting through Margaret's things." "Good." He set the box on the table and opened his portfolio. "What I'm about to share with you was Margaret's closely guarded secret. She made me promise to reveal nothing until after her funeral. She said you'd need time to grieve before you could handle what she discovered." My chest tightened. "What did she discover?" Hartley pulled out a thick folder. "6 months ago, when Margaret received her diagnosis, she came to me with concerns about your son. She'd noticed irregularities in your financial statements, money disappearing, accounts being accessed without authorization." He spread several bank statements across the table. Red circles marked dozens of transactions. My signature appeared on withdrawal slips I'd never signed. "Bradley had been siphoning money from your investment accounts for nearly 3 years," Hartley continued. "Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Margaret estimated the total at close to $200,000. The room spun. I gripped the table edge. "That's impossible. I would have noticed." "Would you?" Hartley asked gently. The withdrawals were structured to look like automatic payments. Investment fees, market adjustments. Bradley was careful, but Margaret was meticulous. She spent 20 years managing school budgets. She knew how to spot discrepancies. I stared at the evidence, my mind struggling to process the betrayal. My own son, stealing from us, while we trusted him completely. "There's more," Hartley said, pulling out another document. "This is the deed to a property at 4700 Pine Ridge Drive. Margaret purchased it 4 months ago, using funds from her mother's estate that Bradley didn't know existed. The house is in your name only." He produced photographs of a beautiful 2-story colonial in one of Indianapolis's most exclusive neighborhoods. Pristine white siding, black shutters, a garden that would have made Margaret proud. "She never told me," I whispered. She couldn't risk Bradley finding out. "The house was her insurance policy for you. She also established new bank accounts in your name, only transferring $540,000 from various sources. Money Bradley couldn't touch." Hartley opened the sealed box, revealing Key's bank books and a tablet. "She left video messages explaining everything. She insisted you watch them alone first, but I can tell you the overview. Margaret hired a private investigator 3 months ago. What he uncovered goes beyond simple theft." He handed me a bound report. The investigator's findings were devastating. Bradley's restaurant wasn't just failing. It was a front for laundering money from illegal gambling operations. He owed dangerous people significant sums. His theft from us was desperation, not greed. "The investigator documented everything," Hartley explained. "Bradley's been living a double life. The successful businessman image is a facade. He's drowning in debt to people who don't accept bankruptcy as payment. I thought about Jennifer's expensive clothes, their luxury cars, the constant traveling, all funded by money stolen from his parents. Margaret knew she was dying. Hartley continued. Her biggest fear wasn't death. It was leaving you vulnerable to Bradley's schemes. So, she took action. He pulled out more documents. She met with federal investigators 2 months ago. Reported the theft, the fraud, the money laundering. They've been building a case waiting for her signal to move forward. She wanted to give Bradley a chance to come clean to make things right. But he didn't, I said, thinking of the power of attorney forms in his car. No. Instead, his plans accelerated. Margaret learned he was meeting with doctors trying to build a case for your incompetence. She knew once she died, you'd be his primary target. Hartley handed me an envelope. These are the contact details for the federal agents handling the case. They're waiting to hear from you. Margaret made them promise to let you decide how to proceed. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside were business cards for FBI agents, Sarah Delacourt, and Marcus Thompson Financial Crimes Division. There's something else, Hartley said, his voice gentler now. Margaret set up a trust, not just for protection, but for justice. She allocated funds specifically for supporting elder abuse victims. She said if Bradley could do this to his own parents, imagine what others might be suffering in silence. He powered on the tablet and handed it to me. Her video messages are here. 23 in total. Some are instructions, some are evidence. But most are just her talking to you, saying all the things she worried she wouldn't have time to say. Margaret's face appeared on the screen, frozen in the preview of the first video. She was sitting in what I now recognized as the living room of the Pine Ridge house. Her expression was serene, despite the illness that was claiming her. Watch these when you're ready, Hartley advised. Take your time. The house is fully furnished and stocked. Margaret prepared it as your sanctuary. She said you'd need a place where Bradley couldn't reach you while you decided your next moves. I closed the tablet carefully, treating it like the treasure it was. Did she suffer knowing all this? Hartley's expression softened. She found peace in protecting you. Her exact words were, Carson gave me 42 years of unwavering love. This is my chance to return it when he needs it most. He pulled out one final item, a leather journal. She kept detailed notes about everything. Conversations with Bradley, suspicious activities, her meetings with investigators. It's all here. She was building your defense long before Bradley made his first move. I ran my fingers across the journal's cover, recognizing Margaret's handwriting on the label, for Carson. Truth is the foundation of justice. What do I do now? I asked, feeling overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she'd accomplished while fighting cancer. That's entirely your decision, Hartley replied. You can confront Bradley directly. You can let the federal investigation proceed. You can simply disappear to the Pine Ridge house and let him wonder. Margaret made sure you'd have options. He paused, choosing his words carefully. She also wanted me to tell you this Bradley is still your son. Whatever you decide, she understood it wouldn't be easy. But she refused to let you become his victim. I thought about the boy Bradley had been, the man he'd become, and the stranger who was plotting to lock me away. He's planning to put me in a facility, Sunshine Acres. He's already got the paperwork started. Hartley's expression hardened. Then perhaps it's time to let him think he's succeeding while you prepare your response. Margaret always said the best defense was letting your opponent reveal their true intentions. He stood gathering the most sensitive documents. These will remain in my safe. The house keys and bank information are yours. My advice: let Bradley show his hand. Document everything. When you're ready, we'll ensure justice is served. I stood to leave, carrying the box of Margaret's preparations. At the door, I turned back. Did she say anything else? Any message for me? Hartley smiled sadly. She said, "Tell Carson I'm not leaving him alone. I'm leaving him armed." Walking to my car, I felt Margaret's presence stronger than ever. She'd known I would need time to process her death before I could handle betrayal of this magnitude. Even dying, she'd orchestrated protection with the precision of a chess grandmaster. I drove to Pine Ridge Drive, using the GPS to navigate the winding streets of the exclusive neighborhood. The house was everything the photos had promised, and more. Margaret had chosen perfectly a place that felt both grand and intimate. Inside, I found her touches everywhere. My favorite chair positioned by the window. The coffee maker I'd mentioned wanting months ago. Photos of our life together, but none of Bradley. She'd created a sanctuary free from the pain of his betrayal. I spent the afternoon exploring the house, discovering her preparations. A fully stocked pantry, clothes in my size in the master bedroom, an office with a computer already set up. She'd thought of everything. Finally, as sunset painted the rooms, gold, I sat down with the tablet. Her first video message began. "My dearest Carson, if you're watching this, then I'm gone, and you've learned the truth about Bradley. I'm so sorry, my love. Sorry I couldn't protect you from this pain. But I can protect you from what comes next." Her voice clear and strong despite her illness filled the room. Over the next 2 hours, I watched her document Bradley's crimes, explain her countermeasures, and most importantly, remind me of our love. The final video was different. She was in our bedroom at the old house, the one Bradley was so eager to sell. It was near the end. I could see how much weight she'd lost. "Carson," she said, "I need you to promise me something. Don't let anger consume you. What Bradley has done is unforgivable, but you're better than revenge. Seek justice, yes. Protect yourself, absolutely. But don't lose the gentle heart I fell in love with. The world needs men like you, especially now when our son has lost his way." She paused, gathering strength. "I've given you the tools to fight back, but how you use them is your choice. Just remember, I'm not really gone. I'm in every precaution I've taken, every safeguard I've built. This is my love letter to you, written in safety and security. Use it wisely." The video ended, and I sat in the gathering darkness of my new home. Outside, suburbia continued its peaceful evening routines, unaware that inside a grieving widower was transforming into something else. Margaret had armed me with truth, evidence, and resources. Bradley thought he was hunting a wounded deer. He was about to discover he'd cornered a wolf. 1 week after the funeral, I stood at the kitchen window of my family home, watching the street. Margaret's garden was beginning to show signs of neglect, the fall chrysanthemums drooping without her daily attention. I'd deliberately let things slide, adding to the image of a man overwhelmed by grief. Bradley's BMW turned the corner at exactly 9 a.m., followed by an unfamiliar Lexus. I moved to my recliner, arranging myself to look properly pathetic. The crumpled tissues and half-eaten breakfast I'd strategically placed would complete the picture. The doorbell rang with aggressive insistence. I counted to 30 before shuffling to answer, making sure my shirt was untucked and my hair disheveled. "Dad." Bradley's voice oozed false concern. "We've been calling all morning. Jennifer was worried sick." Jennifer stood behind him, her designer heels clicking impatiently on the porch. Beside them was a man in an expensive suit, carrying a briefcase that screamed, "Real estate agent." "Sorry," I mumbled, stepping aside to let them enter. "I must have forgotten to charge my phone." They swept into my home like an invading force. The stranger extended his hand with a practiced smile. "Mr. Carson, I'm Derek Paulson. I'm here to help make this transition as smooth as possible for you." Transition. Not sale, not move. Transition. Like I was already gone. Bradley guided me back to the living room with a firm hand on my elbow. "Dad, we need to talk about your future. This house is too much for you to manage alone. Jennifer and I have found the perfect solution." They arranged themselves strategically, Bradley beside me on the couch, Jennifer perched on the ottoman, and Paulson in Margaret's chair. The positioning wasn't accidental. They were boxing me in. "Mr. Carson." Paulson began producing documents from his briefcase. "The market is extremely favorable right now. Your home could fetch top dollar, providing significant funds for your care." "My care?" I asked, letting confusion creep into my voice. Jennifer leaned forward with practiced sympathy. The assisted living facility, Dad. Remember Bradley told you about Sunshine Acres? They have an opening, but we need to move quickly. I hadn't agreed to any facility, but pointing that out would break character. Instead, I blinked slowly, reaching for the papers Paulson was sliding across the coffee table. The wonderful thing is, Paulson continued, we already have interested buyers. Cash offer. They're willing to close within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Margaret had been dead for 7 days, and they wanted me out in 2 weeks. That seems fast, I ventured. Bradley's hand tightened on my shoulder. It's for the best, Dad. The longer you stay here alone, the harder it'll be. All those memories. He let the sentence trail off, weaponizing my grief. Jennifer dabbed at her eyes, though they remained remarkably dry. I picked up the sales agreement, making a show of squinting at the fine print. The price was lower than market value by at least $100,000. The buyer's information was hidden behind an LLC, but I'd bet my pension it traced back to one of Bradley's associates. Where would my things go? I asked, playing the confused elder. Storage, Bradley said quickly. We'll handle everything. You just need to sign. That's when I noticed something interesting in the paperwork. Several pages were already initialed. In handwriting that looked like mine, but wasn't quite right. Bradley had been practicing my signature. I shuffled through more pages, buying time. That's when salvation arrived in an unexpected form. Carson, you home? The voice of Harold Morrison, my neighbor and retired circuit court judge, boomed from the front porch. I'd left the door slightly ajar, hoping he'd notice. Harold never could resist an open door. Bradley's face flushed. Dad, we're in the middle of something important. But Harold was already entering his cane, tapping against the hardwood. At 81, he moved with the authority of a man who'd spent 40 years commanding courtrooms. Sorry to interrupt, Harold said, though his tone suggested otherwise. His sharp eyes took in the scene, the papers, the real estate agent Bradley's guilty expression. Carson, you missed our morning walk. I got concerned. We hadn't had plans to walk, but I played along. Sorry, Harold. I've been distracted. Harold settled into the remaining chair without invitation. Real estate transaction. In my experience, these things shouldn't be rushed. Mind if I look? I've reviewed a few contracts in my time. Bradley's jaw clenched. That's not necessary. Mr. Paulson is a professional. I'm sure he is, Harold replied smoothly, already reaching for the papers. But it never hurts to have a second opinion, especially for such a significant decision. I handed him the contract, noting how Paulson shifted uncomfortably. Harold's expression remained neutral as he read, but I caught the slight narrowing of his eyes. Interesting, he murmured. This closing timeline is quite aggressive, and this contingency clause essentially waives all inspection rights. Unusual for a property of this value. Jennifer's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and whispered urgently to Bradley. Whatever she said made him check his own phone, his face paling. We should go, Bradley announced abruptly. Dad needs time to review everything. We'll come back this afternoon. But Mr. Carson was about to sign, Paulson protested. Bradley was already pulling Jennifer toward the door. This afternoon, 2 o'clock. Have everything ready, Dad. They left in a flurry of tension and whispered arguments. Through the window, I watched Bradley gesticulating angrily, while Jennifer showed him something on her phone. Harold set the papers aside and fixed me with his judge's stare. Carson, forgive my bluntness, but what the hell is going on? That contract is predatory, and your son seems awfully eager to have you sign it. I made a decision. Harold had been our neighbor for 20 years. He'd earned some trust. Bradley's in financial trouble, I said carefully. He needs money fast. Harold nodded slowly. And he's solving that problem by selling your home out from under you. The bastard. He pulled out his phone. I hope you don't mind, but I recorded that entire conversation. Old habit from my court days. Never know when you might need evidence. My respect for Harold jumped several notches. You recorded it. Every word. including young Paulson. They're claiming to represent your interests while clearly working for Bradley. He studied me carefully. You're not as confused as you're pretending to be, are you? No, I admitted. But Bradley doesn't need to know that yet. A slow smile spread across Harold's weathered face. Good man. What do you need from me? Keep that recording safe. I might need it later. Done. He stood to leave, then paused. Carson, I've seen elder abuse cases. This has all the markings. If you need help, real help, you say the word. After he left, I called William Hartley from my new secure phone. Bradley just tried to ambush me with a house sale. Harold Morrison recorded everything. Excellent, Hartley replied. Did you sign anything? I'm going to this afternoon, with my left hand. There was a pause. You're right-handed. That's brilliant. The signature will be legally invalid, but Bradley won't know that. It'll buy us time while he thinks he's won. At 2 o'clock, sharp, Bradley returned with reinforcements. Jennifer Paulson, and now a notary public who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They also brought my daughter Sarah, clearly hoping her presence would pressure me into compliance. Sarah, a pediatric nurse who lived in Michigan, hugged me tightly. Dad, Bradley called and said you needed family support for this big decision. Are you sure about this? I saw Bradley's manipulation clearly. Bring in the favored daughter to make resistance seem unreasonable. But Sarah's concerned expression told me she wasn't part of his scheme. It's happening so fast, I told her truthfully. Because it needs to, Bradley interjected. Every day Dad stays here alone increases the risk. What if he falls? What if he forgets to take his medication? I've been managing fine, I said mildly. Have you? Bradley produced a pill bottle from his pocket. My heart medication. I found this in the kitchen trash. You're throwing away your prescriptions, Dad. That's not managing fine. I stared at the bottle I'd never seen before. The prescription was in my name, but I didn't recognize the medication. Bradley had planted evidence of my incompetence in my own home. Sarah took the bottle, frowning. This isn't right. Dad's never been on this medication. I review all his prescriptions. Bradley's smile faltered for a second before recovering. The doctor must have changed it after Mom died. Stress can affect heart conditions. Without telling me, I'm his emergency contact. Sarah's nurse instincts were kicking in. What doctor prescribed this? Can we focus on the house? Jennifer interrupted. The buyers are waiting for an answer. Paulson spread the papers out again. The notary prepared his seal. Everyone watched as I picked up the pen with my left hand. Dad, you're using the wrong hand, Sarah noticed immediately. Arthritis, I mumbled. Right hand's been aching all week. Bradley's eyes gleamed with triumph as I signed my name in shaky, left-handed script. The notary stamped each page without examining the signature too closely. Probably another of Bradley's connections. Perfect. Bradley gathered the papers quickly. We'll get you moved to Sunshine Acres by next weekend. Jennifer's already arranged for movers to pack everything. What about sorting through things? Sarah protested. Mom's belongings, family photos. All going into storage, Jennifer assured her. We'll have plenty of time to go through everything once Dad's settled. Storage that I'd never see again, no doubt. But I smiled and nodded, playing the compliant victim. Sarah stayed after the others left, helping me make tea in the kitchen, where Margaret and I had shared 42 years of morning coffee. Dad, something feels wrong about this, she said quietly. Bradley's pushing too hard. And that medication thing. I'm calling your doctor first thing tomorrow. I'm okay, sweetheart, I assured her. Just tired. She hugged me again, and I could feel her concern. I'm staying in town for a few days. Bradley doesn't know, but I'm not comfortable with how fast this is moving. After she left, I sat in my living room looking around the home Margaret and I had built together. In a week, Bradley thought he'd have it all. My house, my money, my freedom. I pulled out my secure phone and opened the video Margaret had labeled for when he makes his move. Her face filled the screen thinner than I remembered, but eyes still blazing with determination. He's done it, hasn't he? She said, as if she could see me. Tried to sell the house, probably with some snake of a realtor. Don't worry, my love. The signature with your non-dominant hand was my idea. William Hartley has already prepared documentation, proving any left-handed signature is invalid due to your documented right-handedness. It's all in your medical records. She smiled, that mischievous expression I'd fallen in love with decades ago. Let him think he's won. Pride goeth before a fall, and Bradley's pride is about to cost him everything. The next phase is about to begin. Trust the plan, Carson. Trust me. The video ended, and I carefully stored my phone. Tomorrow, Bradley would start spending money he didn't have confidence in his victory. Sarah would discover the medication was fraudulent. Harold would safeguard his recording. And I would prepare for the next act in this tragedy. Margaret had written the script. Now I just had to play my part. The spider thinks he's caught the fly, I thought, looking at our wedding photo on the mantel. But Margaret had taught me that sometimes the fly is actually the spider in disguise. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching the mood Bradley probably expected me to have. I'd spent the previous night at the Pine Ridge house reviewing Margaret's detailed notes about Sunshine Acres and the surprise she'd arranged. Now wearing my oldest cardigan and deliberately mismatched socks, I waited for my son to collect me for what he believed would be my final journey to independence. Bradley arrived early, eager to complete his plan. I watched from the window as he pulled up in his BMW, checking his phone repeatedly. The stress was showing. Dark circles under his eyes suggested sleepless nights. Good. Guilt should cost something, even if he'd never admit to feeling it. Ready for your new adventure, Dad? He forced enthusiasm as I opened the door, carrying a single suitcase Margaret had packed months ago. Is that all you're bringing? He frowned at the modest luggage. Jennifer said the facility provides everything, I replied, adding a slight tremor to my voice. Right, of course. He practically pushed me toward the car. The movers will handle the rest tomorrow. By Monday, the house will be empty and ready for the new owners. As we drove through Indianapolis, I memorized the route, though I already knew where Sunshine Acres was located. Margaret had chosen it specifically for reasons that would soon become clear. The facility sat on the outskirts of town, a sprawling complex that looked more like a luxury hotel than a nursing home. Top-rated care, Bradley said, filling the silence with his sales pitch. Full medical staff activities, even a library. You'll be very comfortable. Comfortable, like a prize horse put out to pasture. The parking lot was fuller than expected for a Saturday. Several official-looking vehicles caught my attention, including one with government plates. Bradley didn't seem to notice, too focused on his phone, where Jennifer was apparently texting updates about moving trucks and storage units. Inside the lobby impressed even my prepared expectations. Marble floors, fresh flowers, soft classical music. This wasn't the budget facility Bradley had initially researched. This was the premium tier Margaret had secretly upgraded me to. Mr. Carson, we've been expecting you. A distinguished woman in her 50s approached, hand extended. I'm Martha Reeves, Director of Resident Services. We're so pleased you've chosen Sunshine Acres for your next chapter. Martha Reeves. The forensic accountant Margaret had hired, playing her role perfectly. Her handshake was firm, her smile professional, but with a knowing glint, meant just for me. Let's get you checked in, she said smoothly. Mr. Bradley Carson, I'll need you to handle the financial arrangements while I give your father the tour. Bradley's smile wavered. Financial arrangements? I thought we discussed monthly billing. Oh, we did, Martha agreed. But there have been some changes. New federal regulations require different payment structures. Nothing major, just paperwork. My assistant will explain everything. She gestured to a young man who appeared with a stack of documents. Bradley's face went through several expressions as he scanned the papers. $20,000 a month, he sputtered. The quote was $8,000. Martha's expression remained serene. That was for our standard accommodations. Your father is registered for our premium suite with full medical supervision, given his complex needs. What complex needs? Bradley demanded. The ones you detailed in your application. Martha replied smoothly, producing Bradley's own forms, where he'd exaggerated my condition to justify the institutionalization. Severe cognitive decline mobility issues. Medication non-compliance. Such cases require our highest level of care. I watched Bradley realize his own lies had trapped him. To argue would mean admitting he'd falsified my condition. His jaw worked silently as he calculated the impact on his expected windfall. Additionally, Martha continued, Mr. Carson has already handled the first year's payment. He was quite insistent about not being a burden. Bradley's head snapped toward me. You paid how when? I let confusion cloud my features. The nice lady at the bank helped me. Said it was important to pay ahead. Was that wrong? What bank? What account? Panic crept into Bradley's voice. Martha intervened smoothly. Perhaps we should continue the tour while your son handles the paperwork. Mr. Carson seems tired. She guided me away, leaving Bradley with forms that would take hours to complete. Each one I knew from Margaret's notes had been designed to create a paper trail of financial responsibility he couldn't escape. The tour was enlightening. Martha showed me common areas filled with residents who seemed genuinely content. The library was extensive, the dining room elegant, the medical facilities state-of-the-art. This wasn't warehousing. This was premium senior living. Your suite is particularly special, Martha said as we took the elevator to the top floor. Your wife made specific arrangements. She opened the door to reveal not a room, but an apartment. Living area, kitchenette, bedroom, with a view of gardens and a bathroom that could accommodate any mobility needs. It was nicer than many hotels I'd stayed in. Margaret visited 6 months ago, Martha explained quietly. She wanted to ensure that if Bradley succeeded in placing you here, you'd be comfortable. She also arranged for some special features. She showed me the hidden cameras and smoke detectors, the recording system in the lamp, the panic button disguised as a light switch. Everything that happens in this room is documented. For your protection. In the closet, I found closed toiletries and a locked safe. Martha handed me the combination. Your wife left some items she thought you might need. Inside were copies of all the evidence against Bradley, contact information for the FBI agents, and a tablet with secure communication apps already installed. Margaret had created a command center disguised as a nursing home suite. How long should I stay? I asked. Long enough for Phase 2 to unfold, Martha replied. Your wife believed Bradley would escalate once he thought you were contained. She wanted you somewhere safe when that happened. We returned to find Bradley in heated discussion with the financial administrator. His face was red, phone pressed to his ear, as he apparently argued with Jennifer about the unexpected costs. Dad, he said, forcing calm as we approached. There's been a misunderstanding about the payments. We need to discuss alternatives. But I like it here, I said plaintively. Everyone's so nice. And you said it was the best place for me. Several staff members were watching. Bradley couldn't backtrack without looking like he was abandoning his father. The trap Margaret had set was elegant force Bradley to either pay exorbitant fees or publicly admit he'd lied about my condition. Of course you're staying, he said through gritted teeth. I just need to adjust some finances. The next 2 hours were delicious torture for Bradley. Every form required him to acknowledge financial responsibility. Every document bound him tighter to obligations he couldn't afford. The staff, all briefed by Martha, made helpful comments about how wonderful it was to see such a devoted son ensuring his father's care. When we finally reached my suite, Bradley was sweating despite the cool temperature. He looked around the premium accommodations with barely concealed rage. How did you pay for the year, Dad? Where did that money come from? I settled into the recliner, pulling an Afghan over my legs. Margaret handled the finances. She said something about insurance I don't really remember. His phone buzzed. Jennifer again. I could hear her shrill voice from across the room. Something about the movers finding the house already partially empty. Some valuable items missing. Where were the good china and Margaret's jewelry? I need to go, Bradley said abruptly. The movers need supervision. I'll check on you tomorrow." He left without a goodbye, already dialing someone on his phone. Through my window, I watched him storm to his car, gesturing angrily as he talked. Martha knocked and entered with tea. The real Martha Reeves, not the director she was playing. "Phase 2 begins now," she said, setting down the tray. "Your son just committed federal fraud by signing those financial responsibility documents under false pretenses. Every form he filled out adds to the case against him. What happens next? He'll discover the house sale is invalid due to the signature issue. The moving company will report suspicious activity when they find evidence of staged theft. The IRS will freeze his accounts based on the investigation your wife initiated. Everything will crumble simultaneously." She pulled out her own tablet, showing me a timeline. "Your wife was brilliant, Mr. Carson. She anticipated every move Bradley would make and prepared countermeasures. He thinks he's won, but he's actually tightening his own noose." That evening, I ate dinner in the elegant dining room, chatting with other residents who had no idea their newest neighbor was running a sting operation from his suite. The food was excellent, the company pleasant, and somewhere across town, my son was discovering that his carefully constructed scheme was collapsing. I returned to my room to find a message on the secure tablet. Sarah had texted from her hotel. "Dad, that medication was completely fraudulent. I've reported it to the medical board and the police. What is Bradley doing?" I typed back carefully. "I'm safe. Trust what unfolds. Your mother prepared for everything." Later, as rain pelted my windows, I sat in the comfortable chair Margaret had chosen and spoke to her picture. "You knew, didn't you? Every step, every move, every desperate decision he'd make. You gave me a fortress disguised as a prison. Brilliant, my love. Absolutely brilliant." My phone buzzed with a text from Harold Morrison. "Heard you're at Sunshine Acres. Don't worry about your house. I'm keeping an eye on things. Bradley's in for some surprises tomorrow when the movers arrive." I smiled. The movers. Margaret had arranged for federal agents posing as movers to document Bradley's theft of our possessions. Another trap, another piece of evidence, another nail in the coffin Bradley was building for himself. Outside, the rain intensified. Somewhere in Indianapolis, Bradley was probably celebrating his victory, unaware that every move he made was being watched, recorded, and cataloged. He thought he'd disposed of a troublesome old man. Instead, he'd walked into Margaret's web, and she'd been dead for 2 weeks. Tomorrow would bring new revelations, new panics, new desperate moves from my son. But tonight, I was safe in the sanctuary my wife had created, surrounded by evidence of her love and protected by her brilliant planning. Checkmate in 5 moves. I whispered to the darkness, remembering Margaret's favorite chess metaphor. Bradley just didn't know it yet. Monday morning brought chaos wrapped in federal badges and search warrants. I watched from my suite window as official vehicles filled the Sunshine Acres parking lot. Bradley's BMW screeched into view at 7:45, and I could practically see his panic from 5 floors up. Martha knocked discreetly. "Mr. Carson, Agent Delacourt is here to see you." Sarah Delacourt entered with the bearing of someone who'd spent 20 years taking down financial criminals. Her partner, Marcus Thompson, carried boxes of documents I recognized from Margaret's preparations. "Mr. Carson, I'm sorry for the loss of your wife." Delacourt began settling into the chair across from me. "She was instrumental in building this case. Now we need your help to finish it." "What's happening to Bradley?" Thompson pulled out his tablet. "As of 6 this morning, all his accounts are frozen pending investigation. The IRS served papers at his home and restaurant simultaneously. His wife Jennifer is currently at their bank discovering she can't access any funds." Through the window, I watched Bradley arguing with someone on his phone, pacing the parking lot like a caged animal. Even from this distance, I could see his desperation. "Your wife was meticulous," Delacourt continued. "She documented 3 years of systematic theft, fraud, and money laundering. But what triggered immediate action was his attempt to illegally sell your house, and commit you to this facility under false pretenses. The movers found interesting things yesterday, Thompson added. Your son had already removed several valuable items from your home. Artwork, jewelry, electronics. All documented on video by our undercover team. They showed me footage from hidden cameras. Bradley and Jennifer loading boxes into their car, laughing about their success. Jennifer holding up Margaret's pearl necklace, the one I'd given her for our 25th anniversary, saying something about how much it would fetch. Additionally, Delacourt said, Derek Paulson, the realtor, was arrested this morning. He's been running similar schemes with other families. Your son was just his latest partner. A knock interrupted us. Martha entered with Bradley close behind his face, flushed and angry. Dad, what have you done? He ignored the federal agents, focusing his rage on me. They're saying the house sale is invalid. They're seizing my accounts. This is insane. Mr. Bradley Carson. Delacourt stood, badge visible. I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning regarding fraudulent financial activities and elder abuse. This is ridiculous, Bradley shouted. My father has dementia. He doesn't understand what's happening. Whatever he told you is confused rambling. Thompson pulled out a document. Interesting, because according to these medical evaluations dated last week, your father is in perfect cognitive health. The only confusion seems to be yours about the law. I watched my son's face cycle through emotions, rage, fear, disbelief, and finally a cold calculation as he tried to find an escape route. I want a lawyer, he said. Certainly. You'll have plenty of time to call one from our offices. Delacourt nodded to Thompson, who produced handcuffs. Bradley Carson, you're under arrest for wire fraud, elder abuse, and theft. You have the right to remain silent. As they led him away, Bradley turned back to me. For a moment, I saw not the calculating criminal, but the scared boy who used to climb into our bed during thunderstorms. Then, his face hardened. You'll regret this, old man. You have no idea what you've started. After they left, I sat in the sudden quiet of my suite. Martha brought fresh coffee and sat with me, no longer playing the director, but simply being the compassionate professional Margaret had chosen. Your wife knew this would be the hardest part, she said gently. Watching your child face consequences for their actions. She left you another video for this moment. I took the tablet with trembling hands. Margaret's face appeared filmed in what I now recognized as this very room. My dearest Carson, she began, if you're watching this, Bradley has been arrested. I know your heart is breaking. Mine broke too when I discovered what our son had become. But remember, we're not punishing the boy who built model planes with you. We're stopping the man who would have destroyed you without remorse. She paused, touching the camera as if she could reach through time to comfort me. The investigation will reveal things that will hurt. Bradley's debts, his lies, the people he's harmed beyond just us. Stay strong. You're not alone. I've made sure of that. The video ended, and I wiped my eyes. Martha squeezed my shoulder before leaving me to process everything. The next days passed in a blur of revelations. Federal investigators uncovered the depth of Bradley's criminal activities. The restaurant wasn't just failing. It was a front for laundering money from illegal gambling operations. He owed over $500,000 to dangerous people. Jennifer filed for divorce within 48 hours, immediately turning state's evidence to protect herself. She revealed Bradley had been planning my institutionalization for over a year long before Margaret got sick. He'd seen me not as a father, but as a resource to be exploited. Sarah arrived from Michigan, horrified by what she was learning. She sat in my suite, reading through evidence with tears streaming down her face. How did I not see this? She asked. How did he hide it so well? He hid it from all of us, I assured her. Even your mother, until she started looking closely. Michael, our youngest, flew in from Seattle. He'd been stationed overseas with the Navy for most of Bradley's decline, and was devastated by the betrayal. The three of us spent hours talking, grieving not just Margaret, but the brother and son we'd thought we knew. Harold Morrison visited, bringing updates from the neighborhood. "Federal agents have been all over your house," he reported. "They found hidden cameras Bradley installed to monitor your movements. He'd been watching you for months, documenting what he claimed was cognitive decline. The violation felt fresh and sharp. My own son had turned my home into a surveillance state, looking for evidence to steal my freedom." Agent Delacourt returned later that week with more disturbing news. "We've uncovered additional victims," she explained. "Bradley and Paulson had targeted 3 other elderly homeowners. Your wife's investigation didn't just save you, it prevented future crimes." She showed me letters from grateful families who'd almost fallen victim to similar schemes. One elderly woman had been days away from signing over her property when the arrests happened. "Your wife also did something else," Thompson added. "She created a fund for elder abuse victims, managed by a trust. She wanted something good to come from this pain." I learned that Margaret had allocated $200,000 to the Margaret Carson Foundation for elder protection. She'd arranged for legal aid counseling services and advocacy for seniors facing financial exploitation. "She said every parent deserves better than what Bradley tried to do," Delacourt explained. "This foundation will be her legacy." Meanwhile, Bradley sat in federal custody, his bail denied due to flight risk. The dangerous people he owed money to had made threats, and protective custody became necessary. The golden boy, who'd thought himself so clever, was now trapped by his own web of lies. Jennifer sent a message through her lawyer. She wanted to return Margaret's jewelry and apologize. I agreed to meet her at the federal building, curious about what she'd say. She looked different without the designer clothes and perfect makeup. Older, tired, defeated. "I'm sorry, Carson," she said, sliding a box across the table. "I knew it was wrong, but Bradley convinced me you were losing your mind. He showed me videos, documents. I believed him." He was convincing. I acknowledged, checking that Margaret's pearls were among the returned items. "Your wife was brilliant," Jennifer continued. "She came to see me 3 months ago, warned me what Bradley was involved in, told me to get out. I didn't listen. I thought she was being paranoid." This was news to me, another layer of Margaret's protection I hadn't known about. "She tried to save you too." Jennifer nodded, tears finally genuine. "She said no one deserved to be dragged down by someone else's crimes. Even me. I should have listened." As the investigation expanded, more truth emerged. Bradley had been living a double life for years. The successful businessman persona hid crushing debts, failed ventures, and increasingly desperate schemes. He'd started with small thefts, from our accounts, justifying it as advances on his inheritance. When that wasn't enough, he'd progressed to fraud, then money laundering. The really painful discovery came from Tommy Bradley's eldest son, now 22. He visited me at Sunshine Acres, looking haggard but determined. "Grandpa, I need to tell you something," he began. "I knew Dad was up to something. I tried to warn Grandma last year, but Dad found out. He threatened to cut off my college funding, said he'd make sure I never got into law school." "She knew," I told him gently. "Your grandmother knew everything. She was protecting all of us." Tommy broke down, then this strong young man sobbing like the child I remembered. "I should have done more. Should have stood up to him." "You're standing up now," I said, holding my grandson. "That's what matters." Tommy had been secretly documenting his father's activities too, building his own evidence file. He turned it over to the federal investigators, adding more nails to Bradley's legal coffin. By the end of the second week, the full scope was clear. Bradley faced 25 years in federal prison. The money laundering alone carried a 15-year sentence, and elder abuse added significantly to that. His associates in the gambling operation were also arrested, eliminating any hope of outside help. I sat in my comfortable suite at Sunshine Acres, surrounded by evidence of Margaret's love and foresight. She'd known I'd need time to process everything, needed a safe place to watch justice unfold. This facility, which Bradley had chosen as my prison, had become my protected vantage point. Martha Reeves, her real job complete, came to say goodbye. "Your wife hired me to protect you," she said. Watching her plan unfold has been the most satisfying case of my career. She loved you more than words can express. That evening, I made a decision. I called Hartley and told him I was ready to move to the Pine Ridge house. It was time to leave the sanctuary and start the next chapter Margaret had prepared for me. But first, I had one more video to watch. The tablet showed a file labeled "For After the Arrest." Margaret appeared one last time looking tired but triumphant. "The hard part is almost over, my love," she said. "Bradley will face justice, and you'll be safe. Now comes the important part: living. Don't let his betrayal define your remaining years. You have so much love left to give, so much life to live. That's my final wish, that you find joy again. You deserve it, Carson. You always have." As I packed my few belongings, I thought about justice and mercy, love and betrayal. Margaret had given me the tools for revenge, but had really given me something more valuable: freedom from fear, protection from harm, and the knowledge that I was loved beyond measure. Bradley had thought me weak and stupid. He'd learned too late that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to appear weak, and the greatest wisdom is trusting those who love you to fight your battles when you cannot. Tomorrow I would leave Sunshine Acres. But tonight, I raised a cup of tea to the empty room and whispered, "Thank you, Margaret, for everything." The investigation would continue, but my part was largely done. Justice was rolling forward with the momentum Margaret had created. All I had to do now was what she'd asked live. Thanksgiving arrived with unusual warmth for Indianapolis, the November sun casting golden light through the windows of the Pine Ridge house. I'd spent the morning preparing, following Margaret's detailed notes about hosting family dinners. She'd even left recipes, knowing I'd need guidance in the kitchen she'd once ruled. The turkey was in the oven, sides were prepared, and the dining room was set with our best china, the same pieces Bradley and Jennifer had tried to steal. I'd invited everyone: Sarah and her family from Michigan, Michael flying in from Seattle, Frank driving down from Chicago, and Harold Morrison, who'd become more family than neighbor. Even Tommy had promised to come, despite the complicated situation with his father. I'd also invited Bradley and Jennifer, though I doubted they'd attend. Bradley remained in federal custody, and Jennifer was living with her sister while the divorce proceedings continued. But Margaret had taught me that grace meant extending invitations even when you knew they'd be declined. At 2 o'clock, cars began filling the driveway. Sarah arrived first with her husband James and their twin daughters. The girls, now 16, immediately asked about their grandmother's garden. She left instructions. I told them, showing them Margaret's garden journal. Said you two were the only ones she trusted to maintain her roses. Michael came next, still in his Navy uniform, having driven straight from the base. He hugged me fiercely, this son who'd always been quietly supportive, who'd called Margaret every Sunday, no matter where he was stationed. "The house looks good, Dad," he said, taking in the comfortable spaces Margaret had created. "Like home, but different." "Your mother's final gift," I explained. "A fresh start in a familiar style." Frank arrived with his trademark booming presence, immediately taking charge of carving duties. "You'll butcher that bird, Carson. Let someone with steady hands handle it." Harold brought wine and stories, settling into what was becoming his usual chair. The house filled with conversation and laughter, something that had been missing for too long. Then Tommy arrived, and the energy shifted. My grandson looked older than his 22 years, worn down by the weight of his father's crimes and his own guilt about not acting sooner. "Thank you for inviting me, Grandpa," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure I'd be welcome." "You're always welcome," I assured him. "You're not responsible for your father's choices." Sarah hugged her nephew tightly. "We're family, Tommy. That doesn't change because Bradley made terrible decisions." As we gathered in the living room, I noticed everyone carefully avoiding the elephant in the room: Bradley's absence, and the reason for it. Time to address it directly. "Before we eat," I said, standing by the fireplace, "I want to say something about Bradley." The room fell silent. Tommy looked like he might bolt. What Bradley did was unforgivable. I continued. He betrayed the most fundamental trust between parent and child. But we're not here to dwell on his crimes. We're here because Margaret believed in the power of family, even when family fails us. I pulled out a letter, one of many Margaret had left. She wrote something for today, knowing this would be our first holiday without her, and, under these circumstances. Unfolding the paper, I read Margaret's words. My beloved family. If you're hearing this, you're gathered for Thanksgiving under difficult circumstances. Bradley's actions have torn wounds that will take time to heal. But don't let his choices poison what we've built together. You are more than one person's failures. You are decades of love, support, and connection. Today, be grateful for each other. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but today, just be family. Sarah wiped tears. Michael stared at his clasped hands. Even Frank seemed moved. Now, I said, trying for lighter tone. Margaret also left strict instructions about dinner timing, and she will haunt me if that turkey dries out. The tension broke with nervous laughter. We moved to the dining room where the table groaned under the weight of traditional favorites. As we settled in, Tommy's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and paled. It's Dad, he said. He's calling from the detention center. You don't have to answer, Sarah said gently. Actually, Tommy straightened. I think I do. Excuse me. He stepped onto the back patio, visible through the glass doors, but out of earshot. We tried to continue normal conversation, but everyone kept glancing at Tommy's tense posture. He returned 10 minutes later, eyes red, but jaw set with determination. He wanted me to convince you all to pay for better lawyers. Said family should stand together. The audacity, Michael muttered. I told him no, Tommy continued. I told him Grandma already showed us what family standing together looks like. It looks like protecting each other from harm, not enabling it. Good for you, son, Frank said approvingly. As dinner progressed, the awkwardness faded. Stories emerged, memories of better times. Sarah's daughters shared school achievements. Michael talked about his promotion. Harold regaled us with tales from his judge days that had us alternating between laughter and shock. Remember when Bradley was 10? Sarah said suddenly, and he tried to sell tickets to see Mom's secret cookie stash. 5 cents per viewing, I recalled. Margaret was furious until she realized he was donating the money to the school fundraiser. He had such a good heart then, Michael added quietly. What happened? Sometimes people lose their way, Frank said. Greed, desperation, who knows? The why matters less than the what now. After dinner, as the women cleared plates despite my protests, Tommy approached me privately. Grandpa, I need to tell you something. I've been accepted to law school, full scholarship. That's wonderful, Tommy. Grandma helped, he admitted. She wrote recommendation letters, connected me with professors. She said the best response to injustice was to fight it legally. I want to specialize in elder law. Make sure what Dad tried never happens to other families. I hugged my grandson, feeling Margaret's presence strongly. Even this she'd planned. Turning Bradley's betrayal into Tommy's purpose. As pie was served, Jennifer arrived unexpectedly. She stood at the door, uncertainly holding a small box. I'm sorry to intrude, she said. I wanted to return these personally. The box contained photos. Pictures of Bradley as a child, a teenager, a young father. Images Jennifer had taken from our home now returned with apparent, genuine remorse. Stay for pie, Sarah offered, surprising everyone. Aunt Margaret wouldn't want anyone alone on Thanksgiving. Jennifer's composure cracked. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not, Sarah said. But you're Tommy's mother. That counts for something. So Jennifer joined us awkwardly at first, then with growing ease as Tommy sat beside her, offering the forgiveness children somehow find easier than adults. I've been seeing a counselor, she shared quietly, trying to understand how I let Bradley convince me to participate in something so wrong. Your mother tried to warn me, Carson. I should have listened. We all should have seen it sooner, I said. But Margaret saw it for us. That's what matters now. As evening fell and guests prepared to leave, I found myself in the garden with Tommy and Sarah. The roses Margaret had tended were dormant for winter, but her careful pruning ensured they'd bloom again in spring. She really thought of everything, didn't she? Sarah marveled. Even this gathering. She knew we'd need each other. She left one more thing, I said, pulling out an envelope marked for Thanksgiving evening. Inside was a photo of all of us from last Thanksgiving. Margaret at the center, radiant, despite her hidden illness. Bradley was in the picture, smiling, giving no hint of his plans. On the back, Margaret had written, "Remember the good times. They were real, even if the ending wasn't what we hoped. Love always, Mom." "How do we reconcile it?" Tommy asked. "The father I loved, and the criminal he became?" "We don't," I said honestly. "We hold both truths. Bradley was a loving son and father. Bradley also became someone who would destroy his family for money. Both are true. Both are painful. Both are part of our story now." As the last car pulled away, I stood in my doorway, watching taillights disappear. The house felt different now, warmed by laughter and tears marked by new memories laid over old pain. Inside, I found one final surprise. Hidden behind the pie server was a note in Margaret's handwriting. "First holiday survived. I'm proud of you, my love. Keep going." I poured a small glass of her favorite wine and sat by the fire talking to her picture, as had become my habit. They came, Margaret. Even Jennifer. Even after everything they came. Your faith in family was stronger than Bradley's betrayal. You gave us a path forward. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing on the walls. Somewhere across town, Bradley sat in a federal cell, isolated by his own choices. But here in the home, Margaret created family had gathered, wounds had begun healing, and gratitude had found space alongside grief. Tomorrow would bring continued legal proceedings, more revelations, more pain. But tonight, we'd been family. Fractured, complicated, but still connected. It wasn't the Thanksgiving we'd planned, but it was the one Margaret had prepared us for. Her greatest gift hadn't been the house, or the money, or even the protection from Bradley's schemes. It had been this, the wisdom to know that family survives its failures when love remains stronger than disappointment. "Thank you, my love," I whispered to the dying fire. "For everything." The federal courthouse in downtown Indianapolis stood like a fortress of justice against the December sky. 6 months had passed since Margaret's death, 3 months since Bradley's arrest. Today, finally came the sentencing that would close this painful chapter. I arrived early, as was my habit, sitting in my car to gather strength. The parking lot filled slowly with familiar faces. Sarah and Michael had come to support me. Tommy walked with his mother Jennifer, their relationship slowly mending. Frank had driven down from Chicago, and Harold Morrison had insisted on attending. Agent Delacourt met us at the security checkpoint. "Mr. Carson, the prosecutor wanted me to tell you that Bradley's attempts to negotiate a plea deal failed. He's facing the full extent of charges." Inside the courtroom, I took my seat in the front row. Across the aisle sat Bradley's remaining supporters, 2 business associates who still believed his lies, and a cousin who'd always enabled his worst impulses. The contrast between our 2 groups was stark. When they brought Bradley in, I barely recognized my son. The orange jumpsuit hung loose on his diminished frame. Federal custody had stripped away his polished veneer, revealing someone hollow and desperate. His eyes found mine, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the boy he'd been. Judge Patricia Hernandez called the court to order. The prosecutor, Assistant U.S. Attorney David Chen, began outlining the case with devastating precision. "Your Honor, Bradley Carson systematically stole over $200,000 from his elderly parents, while they trusted him completely. He falsified medical documents, attempted illegal property sales, and conspired to wrongfully institutionalize his father for financial gain." Each crime was detailed with evidence Margaret had gathered. Bank records appeared on screens. Forged signatures were analyzed. The recorded conversations Harold had captured played for the court Bradley's voice, cold and calculating as he discussed selling my home. Furthermore, Chen continued, Mr. Carson's crimes extended beyond family. He participated in money laundering operations, defrauded multiple elderly victims, and showed a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that would have continued without intervention. Bradley's attorney, an overworked public defender, tried to mount a defense based on financial pressure and momentary lapses in judgment. But the evidence was overwhelming. Witnesses testified, including Derek Paulson, who'd turned state's evidence to reduce his own sentence. The most powerful moment came when Tommy took the stand. My grandson, poised, despite his youth, spoke directly to his father. You taught me about integrity when I was young, Tommy said, voice steady. You said a man's word was his bond. Then you broke every promise you ever made to Grandpa and Grandma. You didn't just steal money. You stole trust, safety, and peace from the people who loved you most. Bradley's composure finally cracked. He dropped his head into his hands as his son continued. Grandma saw what you were becoming. She tried to protect everyone, even you. She could have had you arrested while she was alive, but hoped you'd change. You repaid that mercy by plotting against Grandpa while she was dying. I'll never understand how you became this person, Dad. But I know you chose it step by step. When it came time for victim impact statements, I stood slowly, my prepared remarks trembling in my hands. But when I reached the podium, I set them aside and spoke from my heart. Your Honor, I'm not here to ask for maximum punishment. I'm here to speak about loss. Not just the money Bradley stole, or the home he tried to take, but the loss of the son I thought I knew. Somewhere between teaching him to ride a bike and watching him arrested in my living room, I lost my child to greed. I looked directly at Bradley then. Your mother's final months should have been peaceful. Instead, she spent them protecting me from you. She died knowing her son had become someone who would harm his own father for profit. That knowledge broke her heart, even as cancer broke her body. My voice strengthened as I continued. But Margaret was stronger than both cancer and betrayal. She built walls around me that you couldn't breach. Every scheme you plotted, she'd already countered. Every lie you told, she'd already exposed. In trying to destroy me, you only revealed yourself. I don't hate you, Bradley. I grieve for you, for the man you could have been, for the father Tommy deserved, for the son who exists now only in photographs and fading memories. You killed that person with your choices, and that's a loss our family will carry forever. When I sat down, Sarah gripped my hand. Even the court reporter seemed affected by the heavy silence. Judge Hernandez called for a recess before sentencing. In the hallway, Jennifer approached hesitantly. Carson, I know it doesn't mean much now, but Bradley wasn't always acting. He did love you and Margaret. He just loved money more. I know, I said sadly. That's what makes it worse. When court reconvened, Judge Hernandez delivered her verdict with measured authority. Mr. Carson, you held positions of trust and systematically violated them. You preyed on your parents' love and attempted to profit from their vulnerability. The fact that your mother's foresight prevented worse harm doesn't diminish your culpability. She detailed each count, each sentence. Wire fraud, 60 months. Money laundering, 120 months. Elder abuse, 36 months. Conspiracy charges, 48 months. The sentences would run concurrently, but the total was still devastating. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison, Judge Hernandez concluded. Additionally, you're ordered to pay full restitution and will be permanently barred from serving as a financial conservator or having power of attorney over any vulnerable adult. 15 years. Bradley would be nearly 60 when released. His children would be adults. His parents would likely be gone. As the bailiffs prepared to lead him away, Bradley turned to me one last time. Dad, I'm sorry. I know it's too late, but I'm sorry. I nodded, unable to speak. What was there to say? Sorry couldn't restore trust, resurrect Margaret's peace, or rebuild our shattered family. Outside, the courthouse media waited. I'd prepared no statement, wanting only to fade back into the quiet life Margaret had secured for me. But Tommy stepped forward, surprising everyone. My grandmother, Margaret Carson, believed justice meant more than punishment. He read from prepared remarks. In her memory, we're announcing the expansion of the Margaret Carson Foundation for Elder Protection. We'll provide free legal services to seniors facing financial exploitation and work to strengthen laws protecting our most vulnerable citizens. He looked directly at the cameras. Elder abuse is a hidden epidemic. If someone you love is being exploited, please speak up. Don't wait until it's too late. My grandmother's death and my father's crimes don't have to be meaningless if they prevent even one family from experiencing what we've endured. Later at the Pine Ridge house, our family gathered quietly. The weight of the day's events settled over us like a heavy blanket. Frank opened a bottle of wine, and we toasted Margaret's memory and the conclusion of Bradley's criminal saga. "What now?" Michael asked. "How do we move forward?" "The way your mother planned," I said, pulling out one final envelope from Margaret's collection, marked after sentencing. Her handwriting filled the page. "My dear family, if you're reading this, justice has been served and you're wondering what comes next. Here's my wish. Stop looking backward. Bradley made his choices, and they've led to their natural consequences. Don't let his shadow darken your futures. Carson, my beloved, you have years left to live. Live them fully. Travel to those places we always plan to visit. Spoil our grandchildren. Find joy in small moments. Your happiness is not a betrayal of my memory, but a celebration of it. To my children and grandchildren, Bradley's failure doesn't predict your futures. You are not responsible for his crimes or defined by them. Be the people you choose to be, not the people this tragedy might make you. Finally, remember that love isn't proven in grand gestures, but in daily choices. I chose to protect those I loved, even when it meant difficult decisions. Make your own choices with love as your guide, and you'll honor my memory better than any monument could. The letter ended with her characteristic directness. Now stop crying, open another bottle of wine, and tell stories that make you laugh. That's an order. Love always, Margaret. So, we did. As night fell over Indianapolis, we shared memories that predated Bradley's betrayal. Stories of family vacations, holiday disasters, Margaret's legendary temper when anyone touched her garden tools without permission. Slowly, laughter crept back into the room. Tommy pulled me aside near midnight. "Grandpa, I've been thinking. Next semester, I want to intern with the prosecutor's office. Work on elder abuse cases. Make Grandma proud." "She's already proud," I assured him. "We all are." As the evening wound down, and family members prepared to leave, I stood in my doorway, watching them go. Each carried their own burden from Bradley's choices, but they also carried Margaret's strength, her wisdom, her fierce, protective love. Jennifer lingered the last to leave. "Carson, I know I have no right to ask, but could you let me know how he's doing sometimes? Despite everything, I can't just stop caring." "He's Tommy's father," I said simply. "That means something even now. I'll keep you informed." Alone finally, I walked through the house Margaret had prepared as my sanctuary. In my office, I found her final video message, one I'd saved for tonight. Her face appeared on the screen, thin but radiant with purpose. "Hello, my love. If you're watching this, it's over. Bradley has faced justice, and you're free to live without fear. I know you're hurting. I know you feel guilty for your part in his punishment. Don't. You didn't fail as a father. Sometimes love means allowing consequences." She smiled then, that special expression reserved just for me. "I've spent these last months ensuring your safety, but now I have one final request: be happy. Not in spite of what happened, but because you survived it. Find new purpose. Make new memories. Fall in love with life again. I'll be waiting for you, Carson, but not yet. Not for many years. You have gardens to tend, grandchildren to spoil, stories to tell. This isn't the end of your story, my darling. It's a new chapter. Write it well. The video ended, and I sat in the quiet house feeling the truth of her words. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The foundation needed organizing. The old house needed selling. Life needed living. But tonight I raised a glass to the empty chair where Margaret should be sitting. You did it, my love. You saved me in every way a person can be saved. Now, I'll try to honor that gift by living the life you secured for me. Outside, snow began falling, covering Indianapolis in pristine white. A new season, a fresh start, a blank page waiting to be filled. Margaret had given me the pen. Now it was time to write. To everyone watching who's faced family betrayal or elder abuse. You're not alone. Speak up, seek help, document everything, and remember that sometimes the greatest strength is admitting vulnerability and accepting help from those who truly love you. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. Like and subscribe if you believe in justice for our elderly and vulnerable. And comment below with your own experiences or thoughts on protecting our loved ones from financial exploitation. Thank you for joining me on this difficult journey. May you never need Margaret's kind of protection, but if you do, may you find your own guardian angel who loves you enough to fight for your safety, even beyond death. Remember, true love protects. True family stands together against wrong, not with it. And justice, though sometimes slow, eventually finds its way. Until next time, this is Carson reminding you to hold your loved ones close and guard their trust as the precious gift it is. Take care of each other. Good night.